Certainly, I'll begin writing part 1 of the story based on the outline I provided. Here's the first part of Alien Academia, the unforeseen impact of a human girl's arrival. Part 1, First Contact at Galactic University. The crystalline spires of Sixnara University glittered against the backdrop of a purple sky, its 3 moons hanging low on the horizon. For millennia, this institution had stood as the pinnacle of galactic academia, a beacon of knowledge drawing the brightest minds from across the known universe. Species from 1,000 worlds had walked its hallowed halls, but never before had it seen anything quite like what was about to arrive. Professor Xelthor, a towering, 6-limbed being with iridescent scales, paced nervously in the teleportation chamber. His tentacles twitched with anticipation as he awaited the arrival of Sixnara's newest and most controversial student. The chamber hummed to life, particles of light swirling into a vortex of energy. With a flash and a pop, a small figure materialized on the platform. Elara Chen, the first human to ever set foot on this world, stumbled slightly as she regained her bearings. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her eyes widened as she took in her alien surroundings. She clutched a battered duffel bag to her chest, a relic of Earth amidst the sleek, advanced technology of Sixnara. "Welcome, Elara Chen of Earth," Xelthor's translator device conveyed in a slightly metallic tone. "I am Professor Xelthor, your liaison during your stay at Sixnara University." Elara swallowed hard, fighting back a wave of nausea from the teleportation. "Thank you, Professor." She managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm honored to be here." As Xelthor led Elara through the winding corridors of the university, the young human couldn't help but gape at her surroundings. Holographic displays flickered with equations beyond her comprehension, while alien students of all shapes and sizes hurried past, some floating, others slithering, each more fantastical than the last. "Your arrival has caused quite a stir," Xelthor explained as they walked. "Humans are, well, let's say your species is considered rather primitive by galactic standards." Elara felt a flicker of indignation, but she pushed it aside. She was here to learn, after all. "We may be new to the galactic stage," she said carefully, "but we have a lot to offer." Xelthor's scales shifted in what Elara would later learn was an expression of amusement. "We shall see, young one. We shall see." The first days at Sixnara were a whirlwind of new experiences and challenges for Elara. She struggled with the advanced technology, often causing unintentional havoc in her dormitory. Her roommate, a gaseous being named Sixa, was initially wary of the solid, water-based lifeform sharing her space. In classes, Elara found herself woefully behind her alien peers. Concepts that were considered elementary here were far beyond the cutting edge of human science. She spent long nights poring over texts, her translator working overtime to convey the complex ideas. But it wasn't all struggle. In her xenobiology class, Elara's unique perspective as a primitive species proved unexpectedly valuable. When discussing the evolution of carbon-based life forms, she raised her hand hesitantly. "Excuse me, Professor Zelnax," she said, her voice quavering slightly. "But couldn't the rapid adaptation you're describing be explained by horizontal gene transfer? It's a process we've observed in bacteria on Earth." The room fell silent. Professor Zelnax, a being that resembled a sentient crystal formation, turned all of its facets towards Elara. "Horizontal gene transfer," it chimed curiously. "Explain this concept, human." As Elara described the process, she noticed the other students leaning in, their various sensory organs focused intently on her. When she finished, a burst of excited chatter filled the room. "Fascinating," Professor Zelnax exclaimed. "This horizontal gene transfer could explain the anomalies we've observed in the Andromeda cluster. Elara, I want you to prepare a presentation on this concept for next week's class." For the first time since her arrival, Elara felt a spark of confidence. Maybe she did have something to offer after all. As the weeks passed, Elara's unique way of thinking began to draw attention. Her primitive human brain, unencumbered by centuries of established galactic scientific doctrine, often approached problems from angles her alien peers had never considered. In her advanced quantum mechanics class, the students were grappling with a particularly thorny problem involving interdimensional travel. As her classmates debated complex mathematical models, Elara sat quietly, sketching in her notebook. Elara, Professor Quixar, a being of pure energy contained within a force field, called out, "You've been unusually quiet. Do you have any thoughts on the matter?" Elara hesitated, then held up her notebook. On it, she had drawn a simple analogy using a piece of paper and an ant. "What if we think of it like this?" she suggested. "Instead of trying to punch through dimensions, what if we fold space-time, bringing the start and end points together?" The class erupted in a cacophony of alien languages as the implications of Elara's simple diagram sank in. Professor Quixar's energy form pulsed with excitement. "In all my centuries of teaching, I've never... Elara, this could revolutionize our approach to interdimensional travel." As news of Elara's insights spread through the university, attitudes towards her began to shift. The initial skepticism and condescension gave way to curiosity, and in some cases, grudging respect. Professors began to seek her out, eager to hear her primitive perspective on their most challenging problems. But not everyone was thrilled with the human's growing influence. A group of students from traditionally dominant species began to view Elara as a threat to the established order. Led by Drakthor, a particularly arrogant member of a hyper-intelligent fungal species, they sought to discredit and humiliate the human upstart. One day, as Elara was leaving the quantum computing lab, she found herself surrounded by Drakthor and his cronies. The alien loomed over her, his spores giving off a menacing glow. "Listen here, primitive," Drakthor's translator crackled. "You may have impressed a few senile professors, but you don't belong here. Why don't you go back to your backwater planet and leave real science to evolved species?" Elara felt a surge of anger, but she kept her voice level. "I earned my place here. Just like you," she said firmly, "and I'm not going anywhere." Before Drakthor could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Professor Xelthor asked, his imposing form suddenly beside Elara. Drakthor's bioluminescence dimmed. "No problem, Professor," he muttered before slinking away with his group. As they walked away, Xelthor turned to Elara. "You've stirred up quite a bit of excitement and controversy in your short time here," he said. "But I must admit your presence has been enlightening. Perhaps there's more to your species than we initially thought." Elara smiled, feeling a mix of pride and determination. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. Little did Elara know that her greatest challenge, and her chance to truly prove humanity's worth, was just around the corner. As she settled into her dorm that night, strange anomalies were being detected in nearby space, anomalies that would soon thrust her into the heart of a cosmic mystery that threatened the entire galaxy. Uncovering a cosmic threat, the lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor Zilnax's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. Elara sat at the back, her brow furrowed as she tried to make sense of the holographic display floating at the front of the room. "As you can see," Zilnax chimed, "its facets refracting light in complex patterns. The anomalies in the Veil Nebula have grown exponentially over the past solar cycle. Our standard models cannot explain this behavior." Elara raised her hand hesitantly. "Professor, what exactly are we looking at?" "Those energy signatures. They almost look artificial." A ripple of surprise passed through the alien students. Zilnax turned its attention to Elara, its crystalline structure vibrating with interest. "Artificial? Explain your reasoning, human." Elara stood, her heart pounding. "Well, the pattern seems too regular to be natural. It reminds me of old Earth transmissions, radio waves, specifically. Could it be some kind of signal?" The room erupted in a cacophony of alien languages. Zilnax raised several limbs for silence. An intriguing hypothesis, Elara. But surely, if it were a signal, our advanced decryption algorithms would have detected it. Not necessarily, Elara countered, warming to her topic. What if it's using a method we haven't considered? On Earth, we've used all sorts of unconventional methods for encoding messages, prime numbers, visual patterns, even DNA sequences. Professor Quixar, who had been observing from the back, floated forward, his energy form pulsing with excitement. The human may be onto something. Our algorithms are based on known galactic communication methods. If this is truly ancient or of extragalactic origin, certainly. Let's continue with part 2 of Alien Academia, the unforeseen impact of a human girl's arrival. Part 2. Uncovering a cosmic threat. The lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor Zilmax's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. Elara sat at the back, her brow furrowed as she tried to make sense of the holographic display floating at the front of the room. As you can see, Zilmax chimed, its facets refracting light in complex patterns. The anomalies in the Veil Nebula have grown exponentially over the past solar cycle. Our standard models cannot explain this behavior. Elara raised her hand hesitantly. Professor, what exactly are we looking at? Those energy signatures. They almost look artificial. A ripple of surprise passed through the alien students. Zilmax turned its attention to Elara, its crystalline structure vibrating with interest. Artificial. Explain your reasoning, human. Elara stood, her heart pounding. Well, the pattern seems too regular to be natural. It reminds me of old Earth transmissions, radio waves, specifically. Could it be some kind of signal? The room erupted in a cacophony of alien languages. Zilmax raised several limbs for silence. An intriguing hypothesis, Elara. But surely, if it were a signal, our advanced decryption algorithms would have detected it. Not necessarily, Elara countered, warming to her topic. What if it's using a method we haven't considered? On Earth, we've used all sorts of unconventional methods for encoding messages, prime numbers, visual patterns, even DNA sequences. Professor Quixar, who had been observing from the back, floated forward, his energy form pulsing with excitement. The human may be onto something. Our algorithms are based on known galactic communication methods. If this is truly ancient or of extragalactic origin, we need to assemble a research team immediately. Zilmax decided. Elara, your unique perspective could be valuable. Would you be willing to join? Elara's eyes widened. Me? Yes, of course. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Elara found herself working alongside some of the brightest minds in the galaxy, including her former tormentor, Drakthor, whose fungal network proved adept at pattern recognition. Late one night, as Elara pored over data streams in the lab, she noticed something odd. Hey, Drakthor, she called out, surprising herself with how natural it felt to address the alien. Can you look at this sequence? Does it remind you of anything? Drakthor's spores pulsed as he examined the data. Curious, he muttered. It's similar to the decay pattern of certain quantum particles, but inverted somehow. Elara's mind raced. What if it's not a message, but a key? A key to unlocking something that's been hidden. The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. If she was right, they weren't dealing with a simple anomaly, but potentially something far more dangerous. As the research team delved deeper, a chilling picture began to emerge. The anomalies weren't random. They were the result of an ancient weapon slowly powering up, hidden within the heart of the Veil Nebula. But who built it? And why is it activating now? Elara wondered aloud during a tense briefing with the university's top scientists. Professor Thor's scales shimmered with concern. There are legends of a race called the Precursors, who vanished eons ago. Some say they left behind weapons of unimaginable power, waiting to be awakened. Then we need to find a way to shut it down, Elara said firmly. Drakthor's spores flashed in what Elara had come to recognize as a scoff. And how do you propose we do that, human? This technology is beyond even our comprehension. Elara met his gaze steadily. Maybe that's our advantage. We're looking at this from angles the creators never considered. Between your pattern recognition, Zilnax's multidimensional modeling, and my primitive human intuition, we might just have a chance. The team worked tirelessly, poring over ancient texts and running countless simulations. Elara's unconventional ideas, once dismissed as naive, now formed the backbone of their most promising theories. One day, as Elara was taking a rare break in the university's arboretum, she overheard a heated conversation. Peering through the bioluminescent foliage, she saw Professor Quick's eye engaged in an argument with a hooded figure she didn't recognize. The weapon must be claimed, the stranger hissed. The hegemony will not allow such power to remain unchecked. Quick's eye's energy form fluctuated wildly. You don't understand the risks. This thing could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. Then help us control it, the figure insisted. Or we'll find someone who will. As the stranger stormed off, Elara's mind reeled. The galactic hegemony, the ruling body of the known universe, knew about the weapon, and they wanted to use it. Elara raced back to the lab, her heart pounding. She burst through the doors, startling Dragthor and Zilnax. "We have a bigger problem than we thought," she gasped, quickly relaying what she'd overheard. Dragthor's spores dimmed. "If the hegemony is involved, we're out of our depth. We should turn over our research and let them handle it." "No," Elara said firmly. "You heard what Professor Quixar said. This weapon is too dangerous. We can't let anyone control it. It needs to be shut down." Zilnax's crystalline form vibrated with indecision. "What you're suggesting? It would be going against the highest authorities in the galaxy." Elara looked between her alien colleagues, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their alien features. She took a deep breath. "I know it's scary, but sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to authority. On Earth, some of our greatest advancements came from people who were willing to challenge the status quo." There was a long moment of silence. Then, surprisingly, it was Dragthor who spoke. "The human, Elara, is right. We have a responsibility to the galaxy. We're the only ones who truly understand the danger this weapon poses." Zilnax chimed in agreement. "Very well, but how do we proceed? The weapon is located in one of the most heavily restricted areas of space." A slow smile spread across Elara's face. "Well, we're in the greatest repository of knowledge in the galaxy. I bet if we put our heads together, we can find a way to bend a few rules." As the unlikely team began to plan their unauthorized mission, Elara felt a mix of excitement and terror. She had come to Sixnari University to learn, but now found herself at the center of a plot that could change the fate of the galaxy. Little did she know, the true test of her abilities, and humanity's potential, was yet to come. As they prepared to embark on their dangerous expedition, forces beyond their imagination were stirring, setting the stage for a confrontation that would push Elara and her alien friends to their very limits. Race against time. The clandestine meeting in the depths of Sixnari University's subbasement hummed with tension. Elara, Dragthor, Zilnax, and a handful of trusted allies huddled around a holographic display of the Veil Nebula. "Our biggest obstacle is getting past the hegemony's interdiction field," Elara explained, her finger tracing the shimmering barrier on the map. "We need a ship fast enough to slip through their patrol routes." Dragthor's spores pulsed thoughtfully. "I may have a solution. My third cousin, twice removed, runs a salvage operation in the Outer Rim. He recently acquired a decommissioned hegemony scout ship. With some modifications, it could suit our needs." Zilnax chimed in, its crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. "Acquiring such a vessel without alerting the administration will be challenging. We'll need a distraction." A mischievous glint appeared in Elara's eyes. "Leave that to me. I've got an idea that'll keep the whole university busy." The next day, as Dragthor and Zilnax made their covert preparations, Elara put her plan into action. She accidentally uploaded a modified version of an Earth virus to the university's central computer system. The harmless but persistent program began spawning endless holographic kittens throughout the campus, overwhelming the alien staff who had no concept of these furry Earth creatures. As chaos erupted and the administration scrambled to contain the feline invasion, Elara and her team slipped away unnoticed. The scout ship, christened Audacity by Elara, was a cramped but nimble vessel. As they approached the edge of hegemony space, tension filled the cockpit. "Interdiction field ahead," Zilnax announced, its crystals vibrating nervously, activating stealth systems. Elara gripped her seat as the ship accelerated, weaving between patrol routes with heart-stopping precision. A warning klaxon blared as they narrowly avoided a hegemony cruiser. "They've spotted us," Dragthor exclaimed, his fungal network expanding in alarm. "Not for long," Elara grinned, punching a sequence into her console. The ship shuddered as it engaged an experimental phase shift drive, momentarily slipping between dimensions. When they re-emerged, the hegemony ships were far behind. As they entered the Veil Nebula, the ship's sensors began to go haywire. Swirling clouds of cosmic dust obscured their view, crackling with strange energies. "The weapon's influence is growing stronger," Zilnax observed. "These energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases." Elara studied the readouts, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's almost like it's trying to communicate. But the language is so alien, even our translators can't make sense of it." Race against time. The clandestine meeting in the depths of Zixnara University's subbasement hummed with tension. Elara, Dragthor, Zilnax, and a handful of trusted allies huddled around a holographic display of the Veil Nebula. "Our biggest obstacle is getting past the hegemony's interdiction field," Elara explained, her finger tracing the shimmering barrier on the map. "We need a ship fast enough to slip through their patrol routes." Dragthor's spores pulsed thoughtfully. "I may have a solution. My third cousin, twice removed, runs a salvage operation in the Outer Rim. He recently acquired a decommissioned hegemony scout ship. With some modifications, it could suit our needs." Zilnax chimed in, its crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. "Acquiring such a vessel without alerting the administration will be challenging. We'll need a distraction." A mischievous glint appeared in Elara's eyes. "Leave that to me. I've got an idea that'll keep the whole university busy." The next day, as Dragthor and Zilnax made their covert preparations, Elara put her plan into action. She accidentally uploaded a modified version of an Earth virus to the university's central computer system. The harmless but persistent program began spawning endless holographic kittens throughout the campus, overwhelming the alien staff who had no concept of these furry Earth creatures. As chaos erupted and the administration scrambled to contain the feline invasion, Elara and her team slipped away unnoticed. The scout ship, christened Audacity by Elara, was a cramped but nimble vessel. As they approached the edge of hegemony space, tension filled the cockpit. "Interdiction field ahead," Zilnax announced, its crystals vibrating nervously, activating stealth systems. Elara gripped her seat as the ship accelerated, weaving between patrol routes with heart-stopping precision. A warning klaxon blared as they narrowly avoided a hegemony cruiser. "They've spotted us," Dragthor exclaimed, his fungal network expanding in alarm. "Not for long," Elara grinned, punching a sequence into her console. The ship shuddered as it engaged an experimental phase shift drive, momentarily slipping between dimensions. When they re-emerged, the hegemony ships were far behind. As they entered the Veil Nebula, the ship's sensors began to go haywire. Swirling clouds of cosmic dust obscured their view, crackling with strange energies. "The weapon's influence is growing stronger," Zilnax observed. "These energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases." Elara studied the readouts, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's almost like it's trying to communicate, but the language is so alien, even our translators can't make sense of it." Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Tendrils of energy snaked around the hull, pulling them towards a massive structure hidden within the nebula's heart. "It's the weapon," Drakthor shouted. "It's drawing us in." As they were pulled inexorably towards the ancient construct, Elara's mind raced. "Wait, look at those energy patterns. They're not random, they're responding to our ship's systems. What if the weapon isn't fully activated yet? What if it's scanning us, trying to determine if we're friend or foe?" Zilnax's crystals pulsed rapidly as it processed the data. "The human may be right. These energy signatures bear similarities to ancient defense systems we've encountered before. Then we need to convince it we're friendly," Elara said firmly. "Drakthor, can you use your fungal network to interface with the ship's communications array? We need to broadcast on as many frequencies as possible." As Drakthor's spores spread across the control panel, Elara began composing a message. She drew upon every scrap of knowledge she'd gained about alien languages and communication methods, creating a hybrid signal that combined mathematical sequences, visual patterns, and even simple emotional concepts. "I have no idea if this will work," she admitted as she prepared to transmit. "But it's our best shot." The message streamed out into the void. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the energy tendrils began to recede. The massive structure before them hummed to life, a docking bay arising open. "It worked," Zelnax chimed excitedly. "We're being granted access." As they maneuvered the ship into the cavernous interior of the weapon, Elara felt a mix of awe and trepidation. They had overcome incredible odds to reach this point, but she knew the real challenge was just beginning. The team disembarked, their environmental suits protecting them from the ancient, stale atmosphere. As they explored the vast chambers of the weapon, filled with technology beyond even the most advanced galactic understanding, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Look at this," Drakthor called out, his spores illuminating a massive control panel. "These symbols, they're similar to the ones we decrypted from the anomaly." Elara approached, her eyes widening as she took in the intricate display. "It's a countdown," she realized with growing horror. "The weapon is preparing to fire." Zilnax's crystals vibrated frantically. "We have less than 1 galactic standard hour before it reaches full power. If it activates, then we need to shut it down," Elara said firmly. "Spread out. Look for anything that could be a power source or a central control unit." As they searched frantically, alarms began to blare throughout the structure. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing a hegemony warship approaching. "They followed us," Drakthor exclaimed. "We're trapped." Elara's mind raced. They were out of time and out of options. With the hegemony closing in and the weapon counting down to activation, she knew she had to make a desperate gamble. "Guys," she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart, "I have an idea, but it's risky, and I'll need your help." As Elara outlined her audacious plan, she saw a mix of fear and determination in her alien friend's eyes. They had come too far to give up now. "It's crazy," Drakthor said, his spores pulsing rapidly. "But it just might work." Zilnax chimed in agreement. "We're with you, Elara. What do you need us to do?" Elara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "All right, let's do this. It's time to show the galaxy what a human and her alien friends are capable of." As they sprang into action, Elara couldn't help but marvel at how far she'd come. From a hesitant exchange student to the linchpin in a plan to save the galaxy, she was about to put everything she'd learned at Sixnara to the ultimate test. The countdown ticked relentlessly onward as Elara and her team raced against time. The fate of countless worlds now rested in their hands, and failure was not an option.